Have you ever heard a story so incredible it sounds like a myth? A tale of a tiny handful of warriors standing against an unstoppable tide? Today, we're diving into one of history's most legendary last stands, the Battle of Thermopylae. This isn't just a story about the 300 Spartans you've seen in movies. It's a much deeper, more complex, and frankly, more awe-inspiring tale of courage, strategy, and sacrifice that changed the course of Western civilization. The year is 480 BC. The mighty Persian Empire, led by the self-proclaimed King of Kings, Xerxes I, has amassed the largest army the world had ever seen. Their goal? The complete subjugation of Greece. The Greek city-states, famous for their squabbles and rivalries, were fractured. Many had already surrendered to Xerxes, believing resistance was utterly futile. Athens and Sparta, however, refused to bow. When Persian messengers demanded earth and water, the traditional symbols of submission, the Spartans famously threw them down a well, telling them to dig for it themselves. The line had been drawn. Xerxes' army, estimated by modern historians to be anywhere from 100,000 to 300,000 strong, along with a massive fleet, began its march south. The sheer scale was terrifying. Herodotus, our main ancient source, claims the army was so large it drank rivers dry as it passed. The Greeks knew they couldn't face this horde in an open field. They needed to find a choke point, a place where the Persian numbers would count for nothing. They found it at Thermopylae. The name Thermopylae means hot gates, named for the hot sulfur springs in the area. But in 480 BC, its more important feature was its geography. It was a narrow coastal pass, with steep, impassable mountains on one side and the sea on the other. In some places, it was barely wide enough for a single wagon to pass through. This was the perfect bottleneck. Any army, no matter how large, would have to funnel its soldiers into a meat grinder, where they could be met by a wall of determined defenders. Now, who were these defenders? Leading the coalition was King Leonidas of Sparta. And yes, he brought with him his personal bodyguard of 300 Spartans. But they weren't alone, and this is a crucial point often missed. The force at Thermopylae numbered somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 men from various Greek cities, Thespians, Thebans, Phocians, and others. It was a pan-Hellenic effort. Still, they were catastrophically outnumbered. Why only 300 Spartans? It was a time of religious festival, the Carnea, during which warfare was forbidden. But the threat was too great to ignore. So, Leonidas, using the excuse of taking an advance guard, handpicked 300 men from the royal guard. There was one specific requirement for these men. Each had to have a living son to carry on his family line. They knew this was likely a one-way trip. These men were not just soldiers. They were a statement. They were a sacrifice designed to inspire the rest of Greece. For 3 days, the impossible happened. The Greeks held the pass. Xerxes, watching from a nearby hill, was reportedly in disbelief. He first sent the Medes and Scythians against the Greeks, expecting an easy victory. They were slaughtered. The Greeks, with their superior armor, longer spears, and the impenetrable phalanx formation, were a wall of bronze and death. Their discipline was absolute. They would feign retreat, drawing the Persians into the narrow pass, only to turn suddenly and cut them down. Frustrated, Xerxes unleashed his elite troops, the legendary Immortals. 10,000 of his best fighters, called Immortals, because their numbers were always maintained. If one fell, another immediately took his place. Surely they would break the Greek line. They couldn't. The confined space negated their numbers, and the Greek hoplites, fighting for their homes and their freedom, were simply better equipped and better trained for this kind of brutal, close-quarters combat. The pile of bodies grew higher, forming a grisly extension of the defensive wall. The Immortals retreated, having failed just as spectacularly as those before them. Xerxes was at a loss. His mighty army was being held at bay by a ridiculously small force. The morale of the Persian army was plummeting. The legend of Greek invincibility was growing with every passing hour. It seemed Thermopylae might just hold. But then came the betrayal. A local man named Ephialtes, whose name would become synonymous with nightmare in Greek, saw an opportunity for reward. He went to Xerxes and told him of a hidden mountain path, the Anapaea Pass, that could be used to bypass the Greek position and attack them from the rear. Xerxes immediately dispatched a force, led by his general Hydarnes, to follow the path. The Phocians, who were guarding this lesser-known trail, were taken by surprise and quickly retreated, failing to send a swift warning to Leonidas. By dawn of the third day, Leonidas received the devastating news. They were surrounded. The battle was lost. At this point, he made a fateful decision. He dismissed the majority of the Greek contingent, ordering them to retreat and prepare for the future battles to come. Their survival was more important for the long-term war effort. However, he and his 300 Spartans would remain. They were joined by 700 Thespians, who voluntarily chose to stay and die, and about 400 Thebans, whose loyalty was questioned and were possibly kept as hostages. Why did they stay? For the Spartans, retreat was not an option. It was against their law and their entire life's philosophy. They were taught to return from battle, either with their shield or on it. But it was also a strategic sacrifice. By holding the pass for as long as possible, they would buy precious time for the Greek fleet to reposition, and for the rest of the Greek armies to mobilize. Their last stand was meant to be a beacon of hope, and a symbol of defiance that would rally all of Greece. The final stand was a scene of epic, desperate heroism. Pushed back from the narrowest part of the pass and attacked from both front and rear, the remaining Greeks fought with a fury born of desperation. Herodotus tells us they fought with their spears until they shattered, then with their swords, and when their swords broke, they fought with their bare hands and teeth. Leonidas fell, and a vicious fight erupted over his body, with the Greeks driving the enemy back 4 times to retrieve their king. Finally, driven to a small hillock within the pass, the last of the survivors made their final, defiant stand. Surrounded and overwhelmed, they were rained upon by a storm of arrows until not a single man was left standing. They had held the pass for 3 days and had inflicted massive casualties on the Persian army. Xerxes had his victory, but the cost was staggering, both in manpower and in morale. A Greek inscription was later placed at the site, famously reading, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." The sacrifice at Thermopylae was not in vain. It galvanized Greece. The story of the heroes who chose death over submission inspired an unprecedented unity among the warring city-states. The delay they caused allowed the Athenian navy to prepare for the decisive naval battle of Salamis, where they would crush the Persian fleet. The following year, at the Battle of Plataea, a unified Greek army, led by the Spartans, would decisively defeat the Persian land forces, ending the invasion for good. The Battle of Thermopylae is more than just a military engagement. It's a testament to the idea that a few determined individuals, fighting for a cause they believe in, can stand against overwhelming odds and change the world. It has a story of how ideals like freedom and self-determination can be more powerful than the largest armies. The legacy of Leonidas, the 300 Spartans, and the heroic Thespians echoes through history, reminding us what people are capable of when everything is on the line. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as inspiring as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most epic moments. Let me know in the comments what historical event you'd like to see covered next. Until then, stay curious.